Hey there everyone, welcome to the Tamriko Lifestyle channel where I talk about loving yourself and the world around you through veganism. I haven't eaten meat for 8 years and I've been completely vegan for over 3 years, so I'm sharing my knowledge and experience with you. Many opponents of the ideas of humanity and non-violence are concerned about the question, what will happen to all animals if we stop eating them? In today's lecture, I will try to disprove existing myths and we will think about such a painful and important issue for all of us. The ideas that everyone will follow a vegan diet may seem extreme, but on the example of some countries, we will see that over the last decades, the number of people in the UK, for example, who follow a plant-based diet has increased by 330%. There are now more than 0.5 million vegans, with around 20% of Britain ages 16 to 24 following a vegetarian or vegan diet. I believe that such decisive changes are possible in general thanks to the comprehensive support of the state. Do you agree? Support my work specifically for English language YouTube with your likes, subscriptions and comments, so you will help my channel a lot. Thank you. You can see the growing interest in veganism all around us, from the explosion of dairy-free milk alternative on supermarket shelves and the rise of celebrity animal advocates to films such as Co-Spiracy and Simon Amstell's futuristic vegan comedy Carnage. What was recent radical lifestyle choice is slowly making its way into the mainstream? For scientists, politicians, and economists, the idea of a vegan future is particularly interesting, and one of the main reasons is the environment. And here's a big question for omnivores. If we stop eating cows, pigs and chickens, what will happen to the 10 billion land animals we now eat every year? I have answered to this, but today I want to deal with each point separately and argue for it. As forests, rainforests and prairies return to life, along with coastal and oceanic communities, the devastating mass extinctions currently occurring will slow. In order to raise and kill hundreds of millions of animals every day for food on this planet, will drive hundreds of animal and plant species to extinction every week. Because of our appetite for a few species of birds, mammals, and fish, we are destroying the Earth's genetic diversity, and it seems upset not to care about those tens of thousands of species, but only to care about the few species we eat. In any case, the animals we imprison for food today lived freely in nature for millions of years and could do so again. The animals we enslave the most for food and produce, such as turkeys, ducks, geese, chickens, and fish, all do just fine in the wild, except they've been hunted and their habitat destroyed. They will continue to do so, and this also applies to pigs, sheep, and goats, which even today have significant wild populations. There are no reason to think that the animals we eat and use won't be able to return to their natural lives living free in the wild. They already are. And what will happen to wildlife if we stop hunting, or animals that are used for experiments or entertainment? Think it over with me. The main thing we need to understand is that the world will not become vegan overnight. As with any other product, as the demand for meat changes, production will also change to meet the needs of the market. More people going vegan will reduce the demand for meat. Farmers will adapt by breeding, raising, and slaughtering fewer animals. Similarly, more vegan products will appear in both convenience stores and health food stores, and more farmers will switch to Korean foods like quinoa, spelt, or kale. So, what should we expect from the vegan world? The earth will turn green. Your fridge may seem like an unlikely place to fight global warming, but did you know that food is responsible for a quarter of all greenhouse gas emissions? What's more, meat and dairy products make up the vast majority of the carbon footprints. The UN says that farms livestock accounts for 14.5% of all anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions, with cow babs being a surprisingly large contributor. To put this into perspective, the BBC reported that this is roughly equivalent to the exhaust of every car, train, ship and plane on the planet. If we all went vegan, global food-related emissions would be cut by 70% by 2040, according to a recent report on food and climate in the journal Proceedings on the National Academy of Sciences. The authors of the study from the University of Oxford estimate the economic value of these emissions reductions at around £440 billion. Healthy life. We know that Western diets are linked to many health problems, including heart disease, diabetes, and obesity. In 2015, the World Health Organization went so far as to classify processed meat as carcinogenic along with asbestos, alcohol, and arsenic. With fewer cases of coronary heart disease, strokes, and type 2 diabetes and some cancer, researchers report that a global vegan diet would also result in 8.1 million fewer deaths per year worldwide. That would save $700 billion to $1,000 billion a year in healthcare, unpaid care, and lost work days. The end of hunger. Will a vegan future be the story of the end of food poverty? When it comes to freeing up space and resources to grow food, there is some evidence to back it up. According to a study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, a carnivore's diet requires 17 times more land, 14 times more water, and 10 times more energy than a vegetarian diet. This is mainly because we use much of the world's land to grow crops to feed livestock, not people. So, of the approximately 5 billion hectares of agricultural land on the world, 68% is used for livestock. This pressure on resources will only increase. According to UN forecasts, in 50 years there will be 10.5 billion people on the planet. The current world population is about 8 billion. To feed us all, it says we will need to grow food more sustainably. Dr. Walt Willett, a professor of medicine at Harvard University, says we could eliminate the worst cases of world hunger today if we had about 40 million tons of food, but 760 million tons are fed to farm animals every year. One of the arguments against this vegan solution is that some pastures are simply unsuitable for growing crops. This is certainly true, but there is actually a bigger problem with eradicated world hunger. We already produce more than 1.5 times more food that is needed to feed all the people on the planet. It simply does not reach all those in need. Culture shock. It should also be remembered that we have been farmed and consuming livestock for about 10,000 years. Our diet is more than just the food on our plate. It defines everything from our work and commerce to our religious and cultural identity. Today, the global meat and dairy industry employs millions of people and often very poor communities around the world. But humanity can simply change these spheres of activity. Agree? Where would all the animals go? If we didn't breed farm animals anymore, what would happen? Would they die out? Would they take over the planet? Farm animals are bred much more intensively than they reproduce in the wild, so any cows take over the world scenarios are a bit far-fetched. As with all wildlife, the numbers of any returning animals will fluctuate and balance dependent on predators and available resources in the wild. Hunting and wildlife. Hunters sometimes argue that if they stopped hunting, the deer population would explode. This is a fallacious argument because if hunting were to stop, it would also stop the practices that increase the deer population. State wildlife management agencies artificially increase deer population to increase recreational hunting opportunities for hunters. But cutting forests, planting deer-favored plants, and requiring tenant farms to leave a certain amount of crops unharvested to feed deer. Entities are creating edge habitats that deer prefer and also feed deer. If we stop hunting, we will stop the tactics of increasing the deer population. If we stop hunting, we will also stop breeding animals in captivity for hunters. Many people who are not hunters are not aware of the public and private programs that breed quail, partridge, and pheasant in captivity for the purpose of releasing them into the wild for hunting. All wildlife populations fluctuate depending on the number of predators and available resources. If human hunters are removed from the picture and we start breeding game birds and manipulating their habitat, wildlife will adapt and fluctuate and balance with the ecosystem. If the deer population exploded, it would decline due to a lack of resources and nature will continue to fluctuate. Animals used for clothing, entertainment, experiments. Like animals used for food, the number of other animals used by humans will also decrease in captivity as the demand for animal products decreases. As the number of chimpanzees in the research in the US declines, the National Institute of Health stopped funding experiments using chimps. Fewer chimps will be bred. As demand for wool or silk falls, we will see fewer sheep and silkworms bred. Some animals, including killer whales and dolphins, are captured from the wild for aquarium shows. It is possible that existing zoos and aquariums could become sanctuaries and stop buying, selling, or breeding animals. Sanctuaries like New Jersey's Popcorn Park Zoo take in abundant exotic pets, inject wild animals and illegal pets. Whether we'll ever have a vegan world is debatable, but it's clear that a combination of factors, animals' rights, animal welfare, the environment, and health forces people to eat less meat. The only possible issue is the cows. Their ancestors, the bison, were first to die out in the 600s, but it's possible that cows could have been reintroduced to Central Asia and Africa, where they lived for millions of years and will eventually return. The ecological niche they inhabited before cruel human enslavement tore them from their ancestral homeland. So, my point is, yes, this is a global problem. It's huge. Animal production for food must be banned globally at the state level, so it must be gradual. Everyone understands that, but with the resources and plan to deal with the mess that will be left behind, and more importantly, having the means and power to find the companies and global giants that support and profit from the killing of animals. It is worth noting that not all animals could simply go free. Some farm breeds, such as broiler chickens, are now so far removed from their ancestors that they cannot survive in the wild. Others, like pigs and sheep, could actually return to forests and pastures and find their own natural population levels. Also, even if we stop eating animals, our destruction of wild habitats will still reduce their numbers. With nature, it's always a question of balance. None of these fates are worse than what would happen if people continued to eat meat. So, concern about what will happen to animals is not an argument against veganism. Honestly, for years this question annoyed me because it seems downright ridiculous, and even worse would be used to justify the cruelty of eating animal foods. But now, when I hear this required from society, I see it as an opportunity to briefly reflect on how our world can be healed. To envision the world gradually becoming vegan is to envision the most positive future for our species, the earth, and all living things. Firstly, as we reduce the number of animals we eat, it will send a message to agribusiness to forcefully impregnate fewer female pigs, turkeys, cows, fish, and other animals, so fewer animals will be imprisoned and there will be less mutilation, murder, violence, terror, and suffering. It also means there will be less demand for GMO corn, soybeans, alfalfa, and other feed grains, and therefore less deforestation, monocultures, and pollution. As this continues, there will be more food for feed-starving people, and monocultural lands can be returned into critically needed habitats for wildlife, whose population and speed decimated by habitat loss caused by livestock grazing and forage grain cultivation. As the vegan trend continues, streams will return and become cleaner. More birds, fish, and other animals will be able to thrive, far fewer toxic pesticides and fertilizers will be needed, and the oceans where ravaging will begin to recover. Livestock production is a major driver of global warming, as studies consistently show, and it will also decline. Also, by eating fewer animal products, people will become physically healthier by eliminating the toxic fats, cholesterol, and animal proteins that cause obesity, diabetes, arthritis, cancer, kidney disease, heart disease, and drug use. People will become emotionally and spiritually healthier because they cause less suffering, and our culture, as the level of violence decreases, will also become spiritually stronger. Reflecting on this, we can clearly see that there is nothing to prevent us from creating a paradise on this beautiful and abundant earth. By becoming vegan and creatively spreading the vegan idea, we are taking the most effective steps to create a world where peace, prosperity, stability, freedom, and general joy are not just possible, but natural. Do you agree with them? Write your opinion in the comments and share this video. May all that have life be delivered from suffering. Thank you for sharing my lifestyle and watching my video. Till next time!